Hi, guys. Okay, well, this is the first intro since the podcast launched. And I gotta be honest, I feel more nervous to record now. Um, I am, I like fully prepared for 12 people to listen to this, and that is not the case. And I know I'm like my first episode, I was like, mostly I'm sure everyone who's listening knows me. And it's like, that's also not the case. Wow. I mostly, first and foremost, want to say hi, welcome. I am so just excited that this exists in the world now, first and foremost. It feels like so correct. And I'm really humbled that everyone is taking their time to listen. And like, I've gotten, whether it's texts from people I actually know or like DMs from some strangers, I am so moved by not only like the response to this, but your willingness to like share with me what your experience has been listening and how much this concept of like feeling behind or feeling like a late bloomer or wanting something to be good enough to be worthy of starting or the fear of trying or feeling, like where we all feel scared to be brave. Just how much it's resonating with so many people, I think is such a beautiful reminder of like I could have stayed in this sort of like egoic navel gazing place for so long and being like, what will people think about me? And will they even like it? And I'm going to embarrass myself. And who does she think she is? And blah, 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 blah. And all this stuff that's just like ultimately like, A, just entirely about me and self centered. And B, are all the stories I create, we create to keep ourselves safe so that we don't have to go do things that make us feel nervous and scared and uncomfortable. And I really do think like so much of my thesis of this thing is like the more that we are all willing to like share more of ourselves, to be in our fullest expression of who we are, that is actually how we can be in service to one another, not in this selfish pursuit, but in like, how do we get out of our own way to share more of our gifts, to be more of service, to help other people feel less alone? Um, we talk about this a lot in this episode. I also want to name, like, I really am quite proud of my willingness to do this and be like, yeah, and you guys are just going to see me get better at something and not have it be polished. And if you have really high taste, you start doing something, you're like, oh, my skill does not meet my taste level. And I certainly don't want you guys seeing that, but here we are. And also now it's started to exist and people have feedback. And feedback from a place of like, oh, this could get, I believe in this thing. I want it to get better. And one of them is from my really dear friend who was like, I want to hear more of you. I want you to share like deeper and wider about who you are and your perspective. And I think it's so funny because here I am thinking this is this like, spill my guts. My heart is like cracked open to you all. I could not feel more vulnerable. And yet, yeah, maybe like there's an opportunity where I am, in the listening to guests, not sharing so much of myself or not wanting to take up too much space. So maybe it's a good place to start to just be like, there's a different background if you're watching because I'm not home. I'm in Paris. So stupidly grateful to be here. Um, and I think, I knew when I was starting this that I wanted to set it up where I could travel and or I could have the podcast wherever I go because a big part of my story, evolution, growth, late blooming is that I travel a lot now. And that was not the case. I think, for me personally, I spent, it's that sort of eldest daughter trope, but I spent a lot of my younger life feeling very old, like really the responsible one, and did a lot of caretaking and, took care of a lot of people and always showed up and And I think, look, there's a lot of beautiful qualities in that. I love that I know how to show up well for people I love dearly, and that I'm reliable and dependable. Like I love those things about myself. And I think that over sense of responsibility, or that, like, I don't have time to do this frivolous thing, was also a way for me to hide and to not have to do really uncomfortable things in my own life to advance my life forward. And so, I talk a little bit about the grief piece to it, which I think will reveal itself more and more over the course of the podcast, because I believe that things falling apart, things coming apart, loss, grief is just the greatest, most tremendous catalyst for growth. And after my mom died December 2 years ago, which was after a slew of like a lot more losses before that, including my stepfather, my grandmother, my dog, the list goes on. No, I make dark jokes, but I was talking to my aunt, and who I love very much. Hi, Anne. And she was like, make a list of all the things you've always wanted to do. If only I could, someday I will, which we all have those lists, right? And I'd always sort of dreamed about just like spending extended time in Paris. And um, I took a little bit of time off of work last year, and I came here and was like, I have been so marred with the grief and responsibility, and like, I might have to do an entire episode at some point about just like death admin, and just how much this like spiritual experience of like loss that we have in our lives is marred with like logistics and administration. But my whole life had sort of been about that, and I was like, I needed to just like take a pause and breathe. And I came here for 6 weeks. I have an uncle, hi Uncle Robert, who I love dearly, who lives here half the year, and when he's not here, he and his wife generously let me stay here in his apartment. And I came to Paris, and I knew no one, and left with a group of friends, and did so much time just sitting and writing and thinking and wandering. And um that's where the idea for this podcast came from, if I'm being perfectly honest. I was thinking of would listen to podcasts walking around and be so jealous. I mean, like, oh, if only I could do that. I just want to fucking talk to people about what their experience is, and I want to explore like how we grow, and like how when things don't work out or when things fall apart, like that actually leads people to step into something new, because that's what I've experienced. And wouldn't that be cool? And sort of through a lot of thinking, I was like, oh, I have this idea. And then I really was like, it's 2020. Who starts a podcast now? Way too late. And like, here we are. But yeah, I think it's important for me to show like what has expanded for me, and sort of this like being willing to shed some old identities, being willing to sort of follow longings and desires and hopes and dreams. And look, I don't think it always looks like the privilege of like, here I am in Paris. But I think for all of us, there is the opportunity to go, what is an experience I dream about having, that feels like some someday far away thing, when really it's like, this is the one shot we got, baby. Like, what does it look like to do that? I think there's an opportunity for all of us to be like, what is an experience I really want to have? And can I give myself permission to want that thing? Maybe it's something I can have right now. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's something I have to work towards. But what does it look like for me to name and claim that that's something I want, without any shame or personal judgment? And so, yeah, here I am. I bop. I'm in Paris. I was in New York before. Um, I feel really lucky. I feel really grateful that that's something I can do. And I guess that's like me sharing a little bit just today of like what it looks like for me to like really have this was not a version of myself a lot of people knew a few years ago. And it is really born out of like a lot of hard-earned work to believe like, oh, I can do that. I can set my life up in a way that allows me to work hard, to, I work from here. I have a job where I can work from wherever. I'm going to record podcast episodes while I'm here. I recorded some episodes when I'm in New York, but like, wow, I get to have these experiences I really want to have. And how lucky am I? I'm really excited for this episode. This episode is one I've been really looking forward to sharing. And that I'm like, oh, how cool that like now I have the opportunity to like platform these kind of voices and share this kind of conversation. I have shared a little bit that I used to work in politics and philanthropy and sort of system collective work. And part of like why I left was it started to feel like we in many of the conversations I was in, we didn't let humans be fallible and flexible. And the stakes feel really high and the world is really scary, and it matters to stand up for what you believe in firmly. And how do we marry that in a way that does not shame people for maybe not seeing it exactly the way we do, or for saying the thing imperfectly, or for having made a mistake at some point in their lives, or for being just like a human who's like doing their best. And man, do we all do weird shit. Like being a human is hard and weird, and like we get it wrong a lot of the time. And I think there's just grief everywhere and trauma that has like we do not as a society also like give human beings the skill set and the support and the capacity and the time and the space to heal and to feel fully real pain and real loss and real anxiety and real fear. And we most of the time don't start conversations from that place. We go, you're a shitty person because you believe that leader, and how dare you, and I will never forgive you. And I don't know, man, like I I have never felt like we just need more of us working towards a better world, and I see collective moments where humans are being so good to each other too. And so, you know, one of the things about this conversation, Anna is just like so brilliant. She is leadership personified, in my opinion. I think one of the things I got so much from this conversation was how to do that, how to be firm in what you believe, how to share how you see the world specifically, and also see other human beings as people doing their best. And how do we share and engage and enroll more people in a vision for a better world versus push people out and shame people away from it. Um, I think that like I want her to be in charge of everything. If it were up to me, it didn't take long for me to cry on this podcast, but I cry in this episode because I'm just so relieved and moved by how she talks about her worldview and how we all get to show up. And I do feel hopeful after listening to this conversation. And I think it's rare right now to feel hopeful. And I think there's a lot to have hope around. And I feel that listening every time I get to listen to Anna in any capacity. And so I'm really excited for this conversation to exist. It feels like, personally and selfishly, I think I was scared in a lot of rooms in the last few years to speak up and say the sort of things that she's saying. I want more people to be willing to be brave, and I think she is just the bravest of beings. So without further ado, here's Anna Malaika Tubbs, one of my favorite conversations I've ever gotten to have. And again, thank you guys so much for being here. It's God, I don't even know. I feel so lucky. Bye.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm so happy to see you.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
Oh my goodness. Also the timing feels sort of miraculous that this is when we're talking.
Yeah. Yeah. It
Just
feels
given-
timely, and also our country is kind of always this.
Yeah, well, I mean, for context, we're recording this like end of January. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of attention on things happening collectively. But
Yeah.
I do think, it's important. And this is so much of what I'm excited to jump in with you today about is like, this is not new necessarily.
No, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But hi. Oh my gosh. You know, it was so fun. I was revisiting things that you have shared and created in the world getting ready for this. And I was
Thank you.
re-listening to your TED Talk.
Oh,
And I
Throwback.
completely forgot that was when we first met
a TED.
at TED in Palm Springs.
Oh my
in like what? That was
goodness.
2022?
That's so true. It actually was 2020, end of 2021, wasn't it? Because it was in December.
Yes, it was like it was
so
like the
almost
first,
2022.
like convening I went to post.
That's crazy. I had completely
Yeah.
forgotten that. You're completely right.
Yeah.
though. Yeah.
And I just remember hearing you and being like, she's such a badass.
Aw,
I'm
thank
like,
you.
"Ugh."
Love. I feel the same way about you.
And then, of course, we've gotten to know each other personally and talk about both like the work we do, but also we've gotten to connect personally around grief and loss and how that's shaped us. So, I'm interested to see where we get to, but
There's so much to say.
there's so much to say.
I'll come back again if need be.
Good, perfect. Yeah, no, I was thinking about, I was like, I do think in the spirit of this being a podcast about like what we are growing into,
Yeah.
I do think it'll be cool to get to revisit conversations with people and
I
like
love that idea.
kind of mark how we evolve.
Yeah. Oh, that'll be powerful.
So you are a PhD
Yeah.
in sociology. You have a master's in
Gender
studies.
Yes. And my
You-
my undergrad is in anthropology. I'm also going to get an honorary doctorate soon.
Stop. Wait, where are you
Yeah.
getting it on?
It's so cool and such an honor. I am the commencement speaker for Occidental this year.
Stop.
Yeah, I've never done a commencement speech talk, so I'm really honored, super excited. Such an awesome university with such an amazing legacy of alumni and speakers. Like Maya Angelou spoke there for commencement in 1992. So I'm just like, wow, I get to carry such a cool legacy and I get an honorary doctorate.
I'm
So I'm
obsessed.
like doctor now.
This is the most you thing that I've ever heard. Like you're a mother, you're a present, attentive,
Thank you.
loving mother. You've written 2 New York Times best-selling books.
Thank
You
you.
have your own podcast. You are speaking places. Yes, you have this TED Talk that I was looking on TED. It has like millions of listens. And you're like, now I'm just going to get this honorary doctorate. It's really remarkable.
I'm so grateful for all of it. Really
But you
grateful.
really are able to hold so much with so much grace.
Thank you.
And I'm curious, has that always been the case? Are you just good at presenting? Is there more happening under the water?
I would say I have always been very organized. Like I've always had my checklist, like what I know I'm going to be doing every
Yeah.
point of the day, down to like, here's my hour where I will be watching TV. And like, I know when I'm going to do things. And I've been like that since I can remember.
Yeah.
Being really intentional with my time. And that's important, I think, with holding so many different things, but also really trying to build a lifestyle that felt sustainable for me. I knew even in undergrad when I was doing internships, like at different tech places, and I had to be there from 9 to 5, and I was like, this is so inefficient, and I think this is just not how my energy works. Like I don't want to have to be somewhere in an office for this many hours every week. Versus I have such a flexible life. I get to decide when I'm going to do things and how I'm going to do them. And that is such a blessing because, yes, I get to write, I get to travel and speak. And at any point, I can say, oh, my kiddo needs me right now.
Yep.
Those meetings can wait. Or that writing can wait. And so that's the thing I struggle more with, is that because I get to choose what I do with my time and I'm trying to make so many things happen at the same time, it's flexible, but the work at some point has to be done. So I sometimes struggle with finding the time to do all the things that I want to do, for sure. And so I'm not going to lie about that. But I'm also very clear on how I want to spend my time, and I'm grateful that not every creative gets to do what they want to do so early on in their career. I'm 33 years old. So usually writers are waiting for much longer before
Yeah.
their writing can help, to
Yeah.
pay the bills. And I'm grateful for that. So I don't feel at all overwhelmed by it because I have such gratitude. If I had to sit in an office and like everybody was telling me what to do all day, and maybe it's like the same amount of effort that I'd be putting out, but it would be so exhausting for me.
Yeah.
So long as I'm doing what I feel is like my purpose and what I want to be doing, then I can do it all.
Yeah.
It's so weird because you were like, I'm 33, I've done so much, and we're having this podcast that's about like feeling late or feeling behind.
Yeah.
And I would look at you and I would look at be like, oh, you are so not someone who is behind. Like you might even be someone that other people look to and say, wow, she already has all these things that I feel like I'm striving for later in my life.
Right.
But I'm curious for you, like, does that resonate? Does that feel real? Are there places you feel like you're like, no, I just kind of am guided by what moves me. I do feel behind in these ways.
Mm-hmm. I am definitely, so I'm always very goal oriented and always thinking of, okay, what do I want to do with this idea? And when ideas come to me, I feel such a sense of a calling. Like I take my ideas very seriously. Like they're like this divine thing, a book idea or a movie idea or a TV show idea. I always feel like if it comes to my mind, it's not just for me to acknowledge it, it's for me to do something about it. So I actually constantly feel behind because I constantly get ideas. So even though, yes, I've done so much and I'm really proud of it and very grateful for it, at the same time, I'm like, oh, but there's so much more. And I'm supposed to be putting this out there. And so I'm like, patience is not my virtue. I'm always trying to get things done, like rushing my agent, my team. I'm like, what's happening? Are we sending a thing? And they're sort of like, you just closed on this book project, like, rest for a moment. So I do have this sense of urgency constantly. I think in a very specific example of where I feel a little behind, and maybe it's not behind, but just something that I wish I'd started sooner. Because now, for example, people are noticing my work, even though I've been working on these things for years, right? And a very particular example. Last year, I had the incredible opportunity to interview President Obama at this amazing event. It was when they told me it was happening, it was insane. And so I posted about that on Instagram, and so many of even my closest friends were like, how did that like shocked in a way, right? Proud of me, but also trying to figure out how did I all of a sudden land this very cool opportunity. And I realized, oh, I don't share much about how hard I work and what I do and the fact that I interview people all the time, or that I've been interviewed by really amazing people.
Yeah.
And so that's the area where I realized I could have done more earlier that would have allowed me more opportunities now, which is posting, sharing with people. By this point, had I shared all of the incredible things that I've done to get to where I am now, I would have hundreds of thousands of followers. Like, I just wasn't thinking of that. I was just so focused on the work. And now, in the way our world works, so much of it is about your following. Even if I would say I don't care about that, there's a lot of opportunities that have yet to come to me, or doors yet to be opened, because people are waiting for me to get to a certain following. Yeah. And so that is one of the areas where I'm like, I could have made it even easier for me. Not that it's been easy. Like, I've worked very hard, but I acknowledge that by 33, having done all these things, grateful for that. And I could have done even more if I'd just been sharing my experiences.
So this is so interesting because I'm thinking about this a lot right now, even doing something like this and taking on this project because we have very different careers, but relate very much. And like, there's so much that I've done.
Like, you're so cool. Yeah. You are amazing, and you've worked with amazing people, and we're both really humble.
I think I spent so much of my life, and I think we can also get into like how our systems and the narratives sort of shape this within ourselves, but really had a story that sharing or taking up a lot of space or being like, look at me, sort of equated to a level of selfishness, of sucking all the air out of the room. I think I was surrounded by so many people who that was the context in which they were sharing.
Yeah.
And through a lot of different life experiences have really come to understand that like sharing is such an act of generosity
Yeah.
and such a act of service.
Definitely.
And I love what you said about like, you know, these creative ideas that come to you, they feel divine. You feel
Yeah.
like you are a conduit of like, oh, I'm just meant to share this.
Yes.
And this is my contribution and participation as a human being on this planet
Absolutely.
for however long I'm here.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so I'm curious for you because so much of your work, and which we'll get more into, is of service to a, you know, a greater good, whatever that means to you personally. So how are you thinking about sharing and taking up a bit more space personally as part of your service work? Or maybe you're not. Yeah.
Yeah, I am. Absolutely. Everything you just described, I relate to on so many levels. I think for a long time, I remember, you know, like when Twitter first started and I was just like, I just don't have that much to like, who wants to hear what I have to say?
Yeah.
You know, to be like writing this all the time. And my husband now, we're college sweethearts. He was like the opposite. He was like, I have things to say. And he was just writing things all the time randomly and like growing this following really early on.
Yeah.
And I always just sort of felt like, I don't know. I don't think people are going to care much about my comments, you know? So and I think that's kind of what social media is like asking you to do is to think you have something worthy of sharing, really. And when you speak about, but actually it could be really helpful to people because there are a lot of people reaching out to me who are asking, how did you do it? And how can I get a book deal? How can I, you know, speak on these stages? How can I do a TED Talk? All these things. And it almost is a disservice to them, but also a disservice to me because it makes it look easier than it was because I didn't really document all the steps to get there, right?
Yeah.
Or nor did I show people the steps you take to get there. And like, so it's sort of like, oh, and here's Anna with 2 New York Times bestsellers. And it's like, oh, actually, no, I first was, you know, sending blog posts places, trying to get published and op-eds and like all the things. And I perfected what I wanted to study and like how I was going to study what I researched for the books that I wrote and how I approached people when I didn't know anybody in a room, when I walk into spaces and where I get those experiences from of being the new kid so much growing up and applying that in my networking skills and authentic connections with people. And I move through the world in my own unique way like we all do. But I think it's very different for some people. You know, like I don't look anybody up before I go into a room like that. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in authentic connection. And I have so much gratitude for every person that I've met, anybody who's been willing to mentor me. And so not, I guess, sharing any of that doesn't give anybody a path to follow. So that's a part of the service. But beyond that, especially in the times that we're finding ourselves in right now, there is something unique that I have to share and say that is helpful to people.
Yes.
I see the world very differently than other people. And so initially when I started kind of posting things, I really had this voice in my head that said, that's so silly. No one cares. Why are you putting that out there?
Yeah.
But the responses I was getting where I often think I'm saying something that's pretty basic, to be honest, because it's really like my truth. It just feels like, don't we all feel that way? And then as soon as I say it, there are people responding saying, that changed my entire perspective, or thank you so much for saying that because now I'm entering my day differently. I'm entering my work differently. And so I also was keeping a part of my activism by not speaking more openly and on bigger stages and sharing even those opportunities on bigger stages with audiences who couldn't be in the room with me. This was the other thing.
I mean, I will say first, just as like your friend and someone who I respect you so much, and I feel so lucky to know you, that it's so helpful for me to hear that. Like even just you sharing that experience for you, it reminds me, because I'm sort of in this funny place of,
have a particular way of looking at the world, and it feels very obvious to me. And I think it is not as obvious to other people.
Yeah.
And I think we can take sometimes the things that come to us with ease for granted, and what is our way of sharing that. And I'm sort of ruminating on how
Yeah.
much I want to use my voice in this moment that we're in. And,
Mm.
I really think about, sort of the humanity that comes into play when we're
Yeah.
talking about systems work, and when we're
Yes.
talking about collective liberation, or any
Mhm.
language that we could, you and I met in more of an activist space.
Yeah.
One of the things I find to be your superpower
Mm.
that I am so excited that you are sharing more of with the world, that I, in my humble opinion, is more of what's needed if we want to live in the world I think so many of us want to exist in.
Yeah.
You're so firm and true to your values, and yet you are so able to speak about things in a way that allows for compassion and curiosity
Thank you.
without bringing in shame.
Mm.
And I, just for the audience, your two best-selling books, one is called Three Mothers, which is about the mothers of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and James Baldwin. And then through those individual stories, really looking at the erasure of women, the erasure of mothers, and specifically of Black women and
Yeah.
Black mothers.
Yeah.
And your second book is called Erased,
Yeah.
which is about how the systems of patriarchy have really left us all behind.
Yeah. Good
So,
memory.
so patriarchy, racism, gender, some may say the things that immediately push everyone into their corners and their
Mhm.
silos,
Mhm.
and want to armor up and have righteousness in whatever area they
Yeah.
fall into around it. And my experiences of you is that you are so willing to touch these uncomfortable spots,
Mhm.
but in a way that invites more people in instead of pushing people out if they are not perfect. If they're not
Yeah.
showing up to the gym already, doing 50K dumbbells,
Right.
if they're only have a 5-pound weight or have never worked out before,
Yeah.
you do that with a lot of compassion.
Oh, thank you.
And so I'm curious for you, what is your worldview around that? I think that's sort of an insane question to ask you to synthesize.
No, I'm ready. I'm ready.
And B, in this moment of time where it is so easy to want to make perfect the enemy of good. And it is
Yeah.
so easy to get caught in our anger and our fear that is very earned. And
Absolutely.
we want to hold everyone responsible. And also humans are flawed and fallible,
Yeah.
and learning and unlearning.
I'm growing. Yeah.
What do you think is the way we approach some of these conversations?
Well, first of all, thank you so much. I'm going to take all of that that's going on my website so people understand what it is I'm trying to do. Thank you for seeing that and recognizing that. I really
every word.
deeply appreciate that, because that is what I feel is one of my ultimate callings, honestly, in the work that I do, which is to bring people together. And that sounds corny, I know, but through a celebration of difference. And when you say that feeling of there are things that are so obvious to me that are clearly not obvious to everybody else, I tell everybody and listeners today, we are meant to have that feeling of, oh, this is so obvious to me, and I'm supposed to share that with people. So especially if you have an idea for a podcast, for a book, for any venture or project where you're like, why hasn't that been done before? This is so obvious. It's because you're supposed to do it.
Yeah.
And just take that leap and take that step, and don't look for other people who are going to do it. Just go and do it right away. So just to put that and pin that. But because of how I grew up, so I'll kind of go a little bit back into how I became this person and why I feel this way about human beings more generally. My parents really wanted my siblings and I to see as much of the world as possible. And so they prioritized us moving around when we were really young over, them owning a house, or their lives could have been much more comfortable. Now that I'm a parent and like I can look back at it, I'm like, wow, they were really making some very intentional decisions around how our worldview was going to be shaped. And so they were lawyers, and if, let's say, a teaching position opened up, a temporary teaching position, they would go and try to apply for that so we could travel and see a new place. If they could consult on a project, they would go and do that so we could travel to a new place. So I grew up in Dubai, Estonia, Sweden, Mexico, Azerbaijan. I went back and forth to Ghana, where my dad is from. My mom was white, Swedish, French heritage. So everything about my life was, we are human beings who are very different from each other. And storytelling is really important because it's how we understand the world around us. Whole nations are operating based off of stories that are being told. And so when I moved back to the States as a teenager, I was really shocked by so many people's discomfort with difference and the need to either say, we are all the same, or to say, I can't understand you because you are different than me and you see things differently than me, versus how I grew up. I was the new kid. My siblings and I were the new kids over and over again, which meant that I walked into everything as an observer first, an eager observer who wanted to be a participant, who walks up to friends and people of all different backgrounds who were speaking different languages than me. And I had to find a way to connect with them, to communicate with them. And so I grew such an appreciation for how different everybody is. And I also have a real understanding of everybody's insecurities. We often walk into spaces thinking we're the only ones feeling insecure. But actually, everybody is. There's some level to us where we're just wanting to be seen. We're just wanting to be understood. We're all, there's so much work now on the inner child, but it's true. We are all that little kid who just really wants to be accepted. And so the other part of it is that I think because I observed so many different systems, so many different countries, is that people don't realize how shaped they are by the country that they're born into. We can maybe say that, but we don't really break it down in terms of how we see ourselves, our relationship with other people. And when I moved back to the States, I lived in Laramie, Wyoming for 4 years. I then lived in Indiana. My parents went abroad again, so I went to boarding school in Indiana, so 2 very red states. But at the same time, I was meeting people who were so lovely, so wonderful, who would often, call me like a second daughter to them, but who will probably continue to vote red because that's what they're used to doing. So there's just nuances to people. There's nuances to humanity. And so all of those things combined, all of those experiences combined, plus what I've studied in school, but more importantly, what I lived, I do have very deep compassion for every single person that I meet and a sense of grace that I want to extend to them while standing in my truth that we're not going to keep people from being treated as human beings. But how can I help people understand each other? And I'm uniquely positioned to do that. And so for me, and then I will also say before I get into my worldview on this, I don't think we all have to communicate that way, actually. I don't think we all have to be the bridge builders and the connectors.
Totally
because
agree.
disruptors are really incredibly important. If we look throughout American history and the progress that we've made, it's not only been those who are willing to shake hands across the aisle or whatever metaphor we want to use. It's also been those who are like, I'm going to burn this down. And that is something that I acknowledge. And to be honest, I respect it. It's just not the role that I play. The role I'm supposed to play, and for any progress that we've seen nationwide, worldwide, it's a combination of a lot of different approaches. So I'm a member of that same team of disruptors, but I am willing to be the one who says, let's talk about this. I'd like to hear your perspective and your experience, and also what matters to you. Because all of us, if we're really asked what matters, okay, I'll say most of us would say, I want to live feeling safe. feeling accepted, feeling seen. And I want to live in a nation where my needs are met and the needs of my loved ones are met. That's actually something that unifies a lot of us.
Yeah.
So then the conversations around policy become very different. Conversations around, hey, do you realize the stories we're being told to divide us are strategic? And actually, we don't have to be on opposite sides of each other. And those are the moments that have really moved the needle throughout American history. So I am very willing to be that person. I'm never going to just be like, oh, and we can all just feel how we feel, and that's okay. But more so, actually, let's try to grow together. Let's try to do that work together and leave room and space for people to progress. What we're missing right now, especially in an era of social media, is something someone says one time. We then freeze that person in that space and time.
Yes.
So that is those are all my thoughts about that and why I feel called to do this kind of work.
I mean, listening to you feels like such a balm, because I love what you said of everyone plays a different role, because I don't think it's at odds with so much of the different work we get to see people do. But I think also because of social media and because of the way our world works now, and again, because I think about what happens when we are scared, what happens when we are angry, what happens when we are, all humans. And look, I think there's a desire to want to go, we are all just good. It's like, no, we are all just human.
Yeah.
And, Carl Jung has this quote, I'm going to butcher it, but it's the best way to, one of the greatest ways to participate politically and for justice is to, do your own shadow work.
Yes.
So you are not projecting it onto the other.
Absolutely.
And I think it is so understandable to me, and I have so much compassion for what happens when human beings are scared.
Yeah. And so many of us are
and
scared.
So many people are scared
Yeah.
because of all the things you just laid out, that we want to live in a world where our needs are taken care of, and so are the needs of those we love. And most people don't feel that to be true right now.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
yes, it is important to have people who are no, there is a new way. I'm going to hold firm.
Yeah.
I need to be that loudest voice in the room.
Yeah.
And I think what I long for, and where sometimes my fear comes in, is not feeling like there is as many people holding the space that you are working to hold, and wanting to amplify that work in a way that is not Pollyanna at all, not let's all just join hands and be, but really, truly, what is it like to be willing to sit in discomfort?
Yeah. Yep.
And we each sort of internally have to build and develop our capacity for discomfort in order to grow.
That's exactly it.
And then that leads me to my next question, which is, if we are talking about those who are maybe later to the party than some of us, right? Because we have to. If I know that the stakes are just a little bit too high now.
Yeah, which a lot of people are realizing.
Make room for people who are maybe growing into a different conversation for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious for you, what does it look like to engage and have uncomfortable conversations and participate with people who are maybe later to this party?
Yeah, my brain is going in so many different directions as to how I would answer this. I have so much to say about this. I think, yes, one, I as I said, it is important that we all have different approaches, as you reiterated, and also agree with you. We need more of us who are like, hey, actually, we don't have to kill each other to get to solutions. We actually really just have to find each other's humanity and motivation. And why are some people not feeling seen? And why are some people feeling ignored in our nation? And actually, there's a real source of that. It's not just divine that we all have fallen into this order where some people's needs are being met and some people's are not.
Yeah.
And therefore we're competing with each other in this scarcity mindset on a national level. That's terrifying. That's really, really painful.
Yeah.
People don't have money to get their loved ones cared for at hospitals. We don't have money to go to the grocery store. This is very real.
Yeah.
And so the way I've been approaching this very specific conversation around the state of the United States of America right now. And my book coming out last year was just sort of like, again, in terms of what I feel like divine calling, I was like, whoa, okay, I had these ideas and
Oh, you were early to that party.
yeah, I was very early to that party.
You were like, okay, so that thing, I'm glad that exists
Glad
now.
it's out here now, but now I need to help people know that I'm not coming at them
Yeah.
with judgment, because the
Yeah.
word patriarchy is on my book, and therefore so many people immediately are defensive, right?
Yep.
They're not willing to let their guard down. This is the reason also I needed to do these little clips on my podcast so
Yeah.
that people feel like, oh, what a lovely message. Like, that's what she's trying to talk to me about, like my
Yeah.
humanity. And not pointing fingers at anybody right now. And of course, we could do that. There's plenty of bad examples out there.
Correct.
But can we together look at something that never served us? So I'll get a little bit nerdy here and get a little bit into the
Please.
book. But the book is called Erased: What American Patriarchy Has Hidden from Us. And so a lot of people are like, patriarchy, I can't do it. And they think that I'm going to be saying men are the worst. They've oppressed all women and we hate them and let's like burn it all down. There's some who have that argument and have reasons for that. They're probably rightful reasons for saying things like that, but that's actually not what I'm saying in the book. What I'm saying is there's a lot of inequity that we're all witnessing right now. There's a lot of pain that we're experiencing right now. There's a lot of people who honestly just need a little hug and love, truly, because from the moment they were born, they were told they didn't deserve that.
Yeah.
And so why are all these things happening? Well, we can turn to the system that we live in. And we often say things like the system, and that feels really big and very vague for people. So let's break down what that system is. Let's return to 1776 and look at what's happening when the founding fathers win the Revolutionary War. And nobody expected this to happen. They were the underdogs. We know this story.
Yeah.
We did not think they were going to win against the monarchy, but they do. And when they win, they have, and I'm the first to really speak about it this way, fear and insecurity that they might lose power in the nation that they had just fought to win. They wanted power in their nation. But the thing is, the founding fathers were also oppressing other people, other underdogs.
Yep.
So people who were enslaved, the women in their lives, indigenous people. And they have a real fear of what happens if this rebellious spirit spreads and other people fight for what they deserve, who helped us win this war.
Yeah.
And so out of that fear and insecurity, and one example is Shays Rebellion, and those who don't know about Shays Rebellion, you could look that up. I won't get too into that, but they need to instill control. This is their motivation so that they can keep power in their hands. So I'm not saying man who, I see on the street, I'm not talking about you right now, but you and I actually could have a discussion about, let's go back to what was happening then. What do they write in the Constitution? They make it so that men can own land, men can vote, men are the ones who pass on their legacy and their status to their children. That's not a controversial statement. That's what they wrote. They also write openly that they're building a republic of men where women should not participate politically. That's not Anna's opinion. That's written. So we know from the letters they write to their daughters, to their wives, they believe that women should not participate politically, that the only role women are supposed to play is to reproduce the power of men through children. That's also just what they felt. This is their worldview. We can see that that's problematic, but that is what they instilled in the Constitution of our country, where they purposefully left women out, where they purposefully left an Equal Rights Amendment out.
Yeah.
And so they build this binary that we're supposed to exist in. That's problematic, it's flawed, it's clearly limited, but it's also excluding so many other people. They're not including people who are enslaved. And we know this because the Constitution has a clause to protect the institution of slavery. So again, not Anna's opinion. If a founding father were to rise from the dead right now and I said to him, do you see me as a full human being? He would say, absolutely not. So, hey, I guess we can all agree on that.
Yeah.
That document that the nation is based on didn't include most of us. And it limited all of us. It didn't include Indigenous people. It wasn't even including people who were disabled. It wasn't including poor white people. Like, this is from a very particular worldview. And it's a system that made us all think that in order to have any rights, in order to be treated as human beings, we have to be dominant. We have to fight to be on top of this made up ladder and hierarchy. So even those who were the primary beneficiaries, white men, they also were limited from being who they were meant to be. They were told, you have to dominate. You can't be vulnerable. You can't cry. You have to provide. You have to do all of these things. And so fast forward to what we're witnessing as a nation right now, where there are clear examples of inequity in every institution, on every level in our nation. But then even those who have so much power and have so many resources, white men are feeling depressed. They are drug dependent. If we look at Elon Musk, for example, and yes, I know he was not born in the US, but you don't have to be an American patriarch. He is on all these drugs, even though he has everything he could possibly need. So I am saying, hey, let's actually come together and talk about how that system that was built nearly 250 years ago didn't encompass our full humanity. None of ours. And how do we build something different together that would actually honor what it is we say we care about? Democracy. And the final thing I'll say about that is, in order to have a true democracy, power has to be vested in the people, all of the people of that nation. Yeah. We have yet to experience that because of what I just described. But we can experience that. We could potentially build that democracy together. And that's actually what I think the Founding Fathers were calling us to do. It's why they allowed for amendments, right? For us to build and grow our understanding of humanity. So that shouldn't threaten anybody. It's about all of us holding power, because that's what we said we wanted to do. And so that is the argument of the book, and the mission of saying, let's do this together, everyone, because it's not working. Everything you're experiencing, whether that's like depression or pain in your own life, it's because you were limited and you were told you couldn't be everything you were meant to be. If you're experiencing really severe inequities, that's also not your fault. The system set it up that way. So wherever you fall on this made up ladder, we are all left unscathed by it.
Yeah. Dude, you're so smart. I'm just like listening. I'm like, I could just listen to you talk about this all day long. No, but I think there's something so, I think it's easy to say like, yeah, we all are struggling under the system. But I think when you actually break down, like, what does it look like for all of us to have a full capacity to be a human being?
Yeah.
To be strong and vulnerable, to be joyful and in profound pain, to see the best in each other and some days see the worst, like to just be like the fallible, flexible beings that we are.
Yes.
Is just such a more enrolling conversation to me. Just my own experience. I'm like, yeah, that's what I want. And I'm, you mentioned the podcast, which is called Revolution.
Yes, Revolution.
Resolution. Sorry.
Either way.
And it's so cool because it's these little 5-minute bites that you drop, every week or twice a week.
Yeah.
That just sort of are distilling some of this stuff we're talking about. And one of the things as I was listening to it that I was so struck by that I think about a lot is that the work we do on ourselves, you mentioned even like inner child work, but like
Yeah.
the work we do on ourselves, I think there's some false choice we've been fed that you either care for a collective and are sort of a martyr to a greater good,
Mm-hmm.
or you are selfish and there's self-care and you take care of yourself, and I'm in my own little hula hoop and that's what matters.
Right.
And one of the things, there's this theme of our conversation of the things that feel obvious to us that maybe aren't obvious to everyone. To me, it seems so obvious that the internal work is always in service
Yeah.
of our interconnectedness.
Yeah. Same.
And that the more that I am willing to go inward, the more I have capacity to go outward.
Yeah.
And I felt so much of that in already what you've released of the podcast, which I know is a year-long project. So can you speak a little bit more on how you feel the sort of, work we do on ourselves, our ability to look at our insecurities, our fear, is in relationship to this collective liberation that you're so committed to in your work?
Yes. And I completely agree with you. Anything that's set up as a binary, I'm trying to distill and say there's so much more to us. We have so much more, so much more nuance, so much more beauty, complexity. Like, we have to embrace that as much as possible. So it's never a this or that kind of situation. It's important to just start with the individual, because you can't even open your mind to concepts like the system or patriarchy or racism. Like, you can't even do that until you see how you have personally been impacted by it. Right? So I also talk a lot about children and parenting, whether we have kids or not, how we should have been parented. And I was parented in a really liberatory way, honestly. My parents, now I look back at it and I'm like, wow, they were really, again, very intentional about all of these things. But when I look at the systems that form us, and when I talked about how each nation that we're born into really shapes who we are, there's very specific things in the US about how we raise children here, how we're told we're supposed to raise children here. And I think just using one of those examples will help to illustrate why that inner work becomes really important before you're able to, and maybe not before, but simultaneously able to hold what that means for our country at large, our nation at large. So one example, when I gave birth to our first son, he's now 6 years old, and I brought him, we're in the recovery room at the hospital, and they were like, you cannot co-sleep with him. This was like a really big thing for them. They were like, you just can't, you might hurt the baby and blah, blah, blah. And I thought, well, one, I've spent a lot of my life abroad, and co-sleeping is very normal. Like, this is not even a question. Like, you keep your baby close to you. That just doesn't even, it wasn't a thing in any of these other places. So as a sociologist and like the dork that I am, I was like, oh, interesting note, for like how societies work. Fascinating. And then this notion of making me fearful that I was going to hurt my child, that like I couldn't trust that I was going to take care of my child, that I could potentially roll over my child or suffocate my child. Like, this was the message that I was being given. And the feminist in me is like, wow. And then that's when it starts, like the control of like women's minds and their relationship to their babies, and like this like fear of like, don't trust yourself. And also don't trust your baby, because when your baby's crying, the natural instinct is like, let me pick up my child and hold them. And so there are all of these moments in American parenting where we're not only telling the parents, don't trust your intuition, do what we tell you to do, what an authority tells you to do, because otherwise you're going to mess it up. You don't know what you're doing, and you need somebody else to guide you on this. We're also saying to that baby all the time, deny your own intuition, because all kids know when they're born is intuition. They feel hungry, they cry. They feel, or they start looking and then they start crying if no one has responded. They want to be held. They tell you. And so many parents here, instead of focusing on that relationship and building that trust with each other and that bond with each other, we're much more focused on an app where we're like, oh, the thing tells me there's still 15 minutes left before you're supposed to eat. So actually you wait. The timer says you're not supposed to eat yet. Or, hey, you're supposed to be in your crib for 10 more minutes. So it's like we do everything much more in service to productivity in the US and efficiency in the US. And we need to get back to work in the US. So I need to get you on a schedule in the US versus relationship, bonding, security, meeting individual needs, unique needs. So that's just one example. There's so many I could list, but that is the country of now adults that we're walking amongst who were not listened to, who were told you got to get on a schedule. Our productivity matters a lot more than you, whose parents were not given the time to bond with them.
Yep.
So I don't even judge the parents because, they had to get back to work. What else were they going to do if the kid was not on a sleep schedule? Like, these are things that in other countries where I lived, and they, like, other countries where I live have their own issues, don't get me wrong. But that is not happening in these other places. If you live in a place where you have parental leave, for example, for a year, you're not in so much of a rush to get your kid to just fit. You actually have time to get to know that child, meet their needs, bond with them. And so that's a part of why the compassion really comes up for me, because that's how I see every American that I walk by. I'm like, oh my goodness, he just needed to be held.
Sweet baby needs a
so
hug.
Sweet baby, yeah, like you just needed some cuddles, and you probably just wanted to be held for a little longer, and you feel like you don't get to be heard unless you're yelling.
Yeah.
And it's really sad.
Yeah.
That's really, really heartbreaking. And I'm not judging any of our parental decisions. I want all of us as parents and family members and aunties and uncles to just be able to make the decisions that feel best for us.
Yeah.
But to be able to really think about, why am I getting this message right now, that I'm fearful to hold my child because I might hurt them? Like, that is actually systemic. So that's a long way of getting to,
No.
This is why we have to address the larger system while also doing the inner work. And so a lot of people ask me, okay, once I have learned what American patriarchy is in your book, like, what do I do now with that knowledge?
Yeah, that was going to be my next question.
Great. I love it. Good segue. In the end of the book, I do offer a little bit around like how we live differently. I think probably a future project, I'll go really deep and do a whole book on how we live differently. But there are layers to it. And that first layer is in the individual self. What are messages that I've been telling myself that actually stem from the system of American patriarchy versus my own intuition? So do I tell myself I am supposed to be quiet? Kind of what we were talking about earlier with like, I can't post. I don't have anything to say. Why did I feel that way? But my husband didn't at all. He was like, I got great things to say. People love what I have to say. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if I have things to say. Why do we feel this way about ourselves? What are we telling ourselves, and how do we see ourselves because of the system we were born into? So that's the first kind of layer, and that's kind of where I'm at with the podcast right now. The second layer of that is, how does that exist in our relationships? How is this system showing up in how I treat my friends, or how I treat somebody in a romantic relationship with me, or how I'm parenting people, or, even if it's like children in my community? Am I like trying to fit everybody into what I think their place is in this hierarchy? Mm-hmm. Or am I trying to disrupt that as much as possible? So an example with children is, when they're born, do we say to them, hey, this is how the world works, and this is what you need to choose between? Or do we say to them, what new world has started with you? And how can I protect that so that you can help us build something new here? It's a very different mentality to parent in the one category of, do this because this is how things are done, or I want to learn something new from you, and I need to protect who you are. So that's just an example of how we can disrupt that in our relationships. The third level is on a community level. How do we disrupt this notion that some people get to be heard and some don't, or that some people get to be treated as human beings and some don't. Any change that has happened in American history started at the community level first. We've never had sweeping change because a president decided, I'm now going to make this better for everybody. It always started because at a community level, people were meeting each other's needs. They were showing how it could all be done differently. An example right now, a current example is New Mexico passing childcare for all. This is really exciting at a state level to see this kind of advance where community members had been meeting each other's needs and demanding that change from their local elected officials, to that potentially growing from state to state to state, where eventually we might actually achieve childcare for all in the US. So that community level becomes really important. And then that final level is in how we think about what we're voting for. Are we voting to maintain the hierarchy, the original social order, or are we voting for more people to be seen as people in our country and to be treated as people in our country, to have their needs met and for them to be able to meet the needs of their loved ones? And that shifts beyond Democrat, Republican, beyond, again, this like binary of two decisions. If there is a binary, it's coming down to, do we want to protect the original way that the founding fathers built, or do we want to get closer to an actual democracy? And that's the question we're asking in all of these levels: individual, relationships, community level, and on the national level.
Yeah. So interesting as I listen to you, I'm like, and this is just me and now my own experience and grappling and curious what you think. It's like, I hear every level and I'm like, yes, 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 yes. And then you go, and then what we vote for. And I go, yeah, but who are we voting for? That's, I'm like, I think there is something so, and maybe this is where we're in this moment of reckoning that I at least see as someone who spent, most of my career in the more traditional pathways of collective change making. I did political work and philanthropic work, and now it's like, okay, I'm coaching and I'm writing and I have a different hat that I'm wearing. And I struggle sometimes when I think about when I'm coaching people around leadership and what leadership really means.
Yeah.
And I see so many people that I know and love doing the kind of work that you're laying out and talking about. And I see human beings, the thing we do see is that in moments of real crisis, human beings show up for one another, whether it's what we saw here in LA after the fires, what we're seeing now in Minnesota.
So inspiring.
I think I could list a laundry list of experiences where there is a collective way that we want to care for one another on the community level, ultimately.
Definitely.
And then when that comes to translating to changing the systems and our leadership, I think there's such a sense, I'll speak for myself. I'm sure there's people who agree with me, but I will just speak for myself. There's such a sense of disillusionment.
Totally.
I have compassion and understanding for why some people at moments have thought not voting or voting for something other than what I voted for was actually meeting the needs of what you said.
Yeah.
Which is insane that I would have ever said that, and I'm obviously not, that's not where my values lie. And then I'm so frustrated with the lack of what feels like a commitment to an old way of being when it comes time for us to show up and move it into a more systems level work.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, and maybe it's just what you were saying earlier of like different people have different roles.
Yeah.
But I'm curious what your experience of that is, what your thoughts are on that, what you would say to like me or me as an avatar for other people about that.
The general you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have so much to say about that. And I often think about the women in my first book when it comes to this question of like all these changes that we need, they feel so impossible. And it feels like we're never going to be able to get there and agree with each other. And for example, we're never going to be able to elect a woman as president. We're never going to be able to get rid of the guns in the US. We're never going to, like, there's a lot of this feeling, right? And like, yes, I've seen it on my community level, but like, how do we finally get this across for our nation? So I hear that. It feels so heavy. But the reason I go back to the women in my first book, and I'll tell you a little bit about them. They were born, all of them, in the early 1900s. So these are the mothers of MLK Jr., Malcolm X, and James Baldwin. And they experience Jim Crow. They experience lynchings being very commonplace. They experience 2 world wars. They experience their, brothers, uncles being enlisted and drafted into something that oftentimes abroad they had more freedoms than they did in the nation they were fighting for. They experience the Great Depression. They have their children during the Great Depression, in fact. They participate in their own civil rights movement that goes on to inspire their sons to participate in a civil rights movement, and to not only participate, but to become 3 of the most important leaders of that civil rights movement. They also see 2 of their sons murdered. This is very recent history.
Yep.
Alberta King, MLK Jr.'s mother, finds out that her son has been killed over the radio. Okay. This is the 60s. They also see the work of their sons becoming their rights of people to vote. Not only Black people, but what that does, what the civil rights movement does for so many groups of people. They live long enough, well, 2 of them live long enough to make it to the 1990s. And one of them lives long enough to see the first episodes of the Oprah Winfrey Show, to see a man named Barack Obama not get elected president, but become in his first office to be elected. So if you were to tell them when they were little girls, hey, someday Black people are going to get to vote in this country. Some people that in their time were definitely saying, that's not possible. That's never going to happen. If you had told them, hey, on one end of your life, you're overlapping with Harriet Tubman, but on the other end, you're going to overlap with President Barack Obama, they'd be like, what are you telling me? That's not possible.
Hairs on my arm.
Because that's what we need to really remember.
Yeah.
Our nation is relatively young. 250 years is really not that long. A story that I also share is that when I went to the University of Cambridge for my graduate degrees, they gave me like my first pullover, like a welcome gift. And it said, founded in 1209. The university was founded in 1209. And I looked at it and I thought, wow, this must be a typo. That's crazy. But no, it's that our nation is really young.
Yeah.
And so on one hand, when I talk about, that group of people who like really want to maintain that original social order by all their might, like that's what they really want to do. That is a part of the American story, a huge part of it. And that's why I say what we're experiencing right now is not anything new. That doesn't minimize the pain of it or the seriousness of it, but it's not new.
Yes.
It's rooted in that and protecting that. But the thing that makes me so proud to be American is that what's more important in our history are those who said that worldview is not enough and we are going to fight for more. That is the legacy that I'm a part of. That is American history too. We fought for that. We held onto that with our hands. We grabbed it. We demanded it. All these people with all our different approaches with one goal, to finally feel a true democracy. And we're not there yet. So what we're experiencing right now is that continuance of this tug of war.
Yeah.
So for so many people to have this mindset of, we're never going to get there, that's impossible. The reason we feel that way is because those who fought for us gave us so many years of comfort that we had never experienced in this nation. As a Black woman, as a Black mother with 3 Black children walking around this country, I am at a level of ultimate comfort in the United States that we've never seen.
Yeah.
So I cannot, in my right mind, say, I don't know what's going to happen now. I mean, this is so bad, so scary.
Mm-hmm.
Never been here before. What are we? That's insane. That's so crazy.
Yeah.
So when I talk about, my ideas being like somebody gave me this source, these divine things, I feel so deeply connected to the 3 mothers that I wrote about. Because while I was writing it, I was also expecting my firstborn, my son. And it really felt like they were giving me these messages. Like, yes, this can be really scary, really hard, but remember what we've done.
Yeah.
And so I carry that every day. Yes, what's happening right now is horrifying. It is horrible. But this is the story of the United States.
Yep.
And it's not the time for those of us who do believe that we can achieve a true democracy to be like, I don't know. What?
Yeah.
No, we have to remember. We have to wake up. And we have to be willing to be brave. Like how privileged are we that we've forgotten to be brave?
Yeah. Whew.
That's my mic drop moment.
Yeah. Well, for the record, it's officially the first time I've cried on the podcast.
Yes, remember the day.
I
Challenge all the people who are coming after me to make
Yeah.
you cry.
Yeah. No, and I'm trying to just like be as willing to be honest and brave as you just were. I'm so you're so powerful.
Thank you. Thank you.
I really I feel so lucky and excited that this is a conversation that is going to get to exist in the world. I'm sure you're having this conversation in many other rooms right now.
Yeah.
But it is I believe so firmly in everything you just said, and it is so rare in my body that I feel hope and possibility that is grounded in like the real reality of the moment we're in.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes when we just want to sit in the reality of it, it can just feel so dark and heavy and impossible.
Yeah.
And sometimes the things we're presented as hope and possibility feel so washed of the textures of what is really happening and the difficulty and our history. And I am so moved by your willingness and ability to channel the complexity of the moment and inspire people to want to be to participate more. And so to go all the way back to where we started, just as someone who, selfishly benefits from it, and I'm lucky to get to benefit from you in my life, and also collectively just am desperate for more of your voice in the world. I'm so excited that you are willing to share more. I'm so excited that you're doing, bigger and braver things because we need it. I can't believe we have to wrap this conversation. I could talk about you for hours. But I do ask 2 questions to everyone before we wrap. And the first one is mildly cliche, but I think is cliche for a reason, which is you can pick any version of yourself at any moment, at any age. What would you say to her?
Ooh. Oh, that's good. I think to kind of continue our theme of some of the things we've already brought up of why did I not like keep track of all the things I was doing? Why didn't I share with people what I was doing? And like, honestly, I feel very inspired by so many people I've met here in LA who did the opposite, who were like, I'm going to put it all out there and like really, build these really powerful platforms. And they're so lovely and wonderful and leave me feeling like, I could have done that. I can do that. I still can.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It's not when we're feeling behind. You just start and do it. But I think I would have told myself when I graduated from undergrad, especially, I think that would have been like a really key moment. Honestly, even before then, I was like president of our Black Student Union. We were organizing all the time. We did rallies and marches.
Yeah.
So maybe even starting my undergraduate experience, maybe just start documenting this a little bit more. And even when I think about the kind of research that I do, and I'm often uncovering the details of hidden figures that others have tried to erase and bury, and have tried to tell their story for them without honoring their truths. It's also really important for us to do that record keeping for ourselves, but for just keeping the story alive and also accurate.
Yeah.
And I would have told her, like, your story is not only worth sharing, but it'll help a lot of people. So just do it. Just jump and do it. And yeah, I mean, that would have been, like 12, how many years ago now? 14 years ago of content. So it's not just for the content, but yeah, I think, I am so grateful when people feel moved by what I have to say. And then I'm like, how do I share that with more people?
Yeah.
How do I give that feeling to more people?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm really focused on that right now.
Yeah. I'm going to use my tears as fuel for the
Make
content.
more people cry.
Make more people cry. Okay. And then last question,
Yes.
and maybe that you sort of answered, or maybe it's different. What party are you heading to?
Oh, I love it. Okay, I've been saying for this year, for 2026, that up until now, I think I had a lot of moments where, let's say, like a conference happened and they were maybe talking about like women's issues or mothers' issues, and like maybe I wasn't invited to that conference or I wasn't invited to speak, and I would have this moment of like, but don't they know what I do? Like, why am I not at that thing? Like, that's so sad, or like, why? I think I was waiting. I was waiting to be seen.
Yeah.
I'll put it that way. And kind of wondering, will they see me? Will I be there, or will I be invited? And I'm stepping more into my era of, let me just show people who I am and put my work out there. Like, not, what am I waiting for?
Yeah.
And that's part of launching the podcast. I'm just going to talk for 10 minutes every week. Just put some little clips out there and trust that those little bits will find the right people who need them. And at the very least, there will be a record of what I have to say. And I was really thinking about this morning, that I'm so deeply grateful that 2 of my books, hundreds of pages of my words will live beyond me. And the honor of that, the gratitude I have for that, and that I am continuing to live and can continue to do that is so incredibly powerful, and I don't take it for granted. So I'm really stepping into leaving my will I be seen era and just showing everybody who I am era.
Well, so grateful you're showing everybody.
Thank you so much for having me. These
Oh
questions
my
were so
God.
good.
You're the best. I adore you. Hey guys, it's Sophie. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Late to the Party. Truly getting to have these conversations and share them with you is such a gift. If something in today's episode resonated, I'd love if you followed the show, left a review, or sent it to a friend who might enjoy it too. That's genuinely how this little thing grows, and I'm so grateful you're here. New episodes drop every other Wednesday. You can find me on socials at @SoForGear, and you can follow the show at @LateToTheParty_pod. A huge thank you to the people who make this show possible. Nikki Stein, my brilliant editor, Nick Murphy, my cousin and honorary producer, branding by Lucy Anderson, also my cousin, photos by my dear friend Olivia Pierce, with creative direction by Annie Steele, who happens to be my sister-in-law. This is very much a family affair. I appreciate you being here more than you know. Until next time, you're not late, you're right on time.